Yeah, let's get to one of our regulars, Dan Lacalle, who is chief economist at Gestion as well. And Dan, you're putting into words what a lot of us have concerns about, and that is that governments are using ultra-loose monetary policy not to make reforms, but actually just to make hay and just abandon any fiscal responsibility, which then is creating stresses, i.e. that they can't even take the slightest rise in yields, otherwise that will create broader tensions. That's basically what you're saying, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think it's very concerning because right now we should be talking all over the world about improving the fiscal balances of most of, particularly the developed economies. There's been a tremendous fiscal space used for the recovery. The productive economy, the private sector is coming back. So it absolutely makes no sense to not just maintain, but in some cases, as we're seeing in some of the European economies, increasing deficits. And we must remember that most of those deficits come from current spending. Therefore, there will be a burden on growth and a burden on job creation in the future.
Will inflation, dare I bring inflation back into this early conversation, will inflation force the hand of the central banks, or are you on the White House Jay Powell view that actually things will just calm down by their own kind of over time, shall we say, over the next 6 months or so?
My concern with inflation is the sticky parts of the components that we're seeing. If we look at the rise in non-replicable goods and services, they are much faster than what we see in the headline CPI. And this was a problem that happened already in 2018 and 2019. And remember, we saw protests all over the world against the rise in the cost of living. So the problem in shelter is going to come back to bite central banks in the next quarter in particular. And the problem of those goods and services that have risen 6-7%, and that they may see a slowdown in the increase in price, but that previous increase remains. That is the big problem, because it does not come back to improve the situation for the vast majority of citizens. Inflation hurts the most disadvantaged significantly, and we have seen how the perceived inflation by the poorest is up to 3 times higher than that of the wealthiest in the developed economies in particular. We have seen the FAO food price index reach levels that we had not seen for many, many years. So I think that the problem of the transitory rhetoric about inflation is, first, what does transitory mean? Is it 1 year? Is it 2 years? Second, is that it doesn't matter. Because what matters to citizens globally is that while salaries and real wages have not been going up, and many people are still in furlough jobs, still in a very delicate situation, prices are going up. And the prices of non-replicable goods, which is what matters to most citizens, not the basket that we see in the headline CPI, that is much higher than what many of central banks perceive. So my concern is, central banks will maintain the rhetoric and will maintain the view that inflation is transitory, and it will not change their policy. But the impact on social unrest of the rise in food prices, shelter, and utilities is one thing to be concerned about, and certainly from the perspective of investment in, for example, emerging economies or consumer goods.